We're about news, commentary, conversations, truth, liberty, and God. We stand for American values and our flag. We believe that the Constitution is a document that fortifies rights already given to us by our Creator. We will not apologize for our love of God and country, ever. We are Right America Media.
There's that beautiful generic... What the hell's wrong with my microphone? There we go. All right. Now we're cooking with gas. Oh, we got a good show coming up for you tonight. Welcome to a brand spanking new edition of Granite State Live. It is great to have you along on this Tuesday evening, the 10th day of June, 2025. I am your unapologetic contrarian host, Keith Hansen, heavily armed as always, more so now than ever. We're going to get into that. Never apologizing for my toxic white masculinity, never apologizing for my Christian faith.
Hello, and I'm your co-host, Julian, the Blue Collar Intellectual, author, host of the Blue Collar Intellectual podcast, and your residential, fuck around and find out conservative. And that's going to be my one F-bomb for tonight.
So, we got a great show coming up for you. First of all, coming up at 7:30, we got the show notes right here. Donald Trump having no choice but to send the National Guard. Is that true? Well, Michael Letts, founder, president, and CEO of Invest USA, a national grassroots nonprofit organization, helping hundreds of communities provide thousands of bulletproof vests for police forces through educational, public relations, sponsorship, and fundraising programs. We're going to have a conversation with Michael coming up at 7:30 tonight. And then joining us at 8:15 is Bruce de Torres. He is the Director of Communications for the American Small Business League. The Small Business League pulling out of Los Angeles because, you know what? When I'm pissed off at the government, I go loot an Apple store. I go steal things from my local high-end department stores. I rob from Macy's. I steal shoes. I go and I burglarize the Coach outlet because this is gonna send a message to the man.
Stick it to the man.
Stick it to the man.
Get yourself a new pair of J's.
Yeah.
Stick it to the man.
Man, there's nothing that says I'm pissed off at all the socio-political issues like looting me a new 65-inch flat screen TV.
65-inch, hell, go big. Get an 85-inch.
Well, you got to be able to carry it. And most of these people are averse to work. So it's not like they're actually going to, do any heavy lifting. So we'll stick to the 55 to 65-inch.
Have you noticed since they started allowing looting that the looters have gotten fatter?
Yeah, a bunch of lazy,
now that
degenerate
they don't have
scumbags.
Well, now that they don't have to run, you notice they got a lot fatter. Like it used to be, if you had to steal stuff, you had to at least be in shape, right? Because you had to run away from the cops. Now in L.A., you don't got to be in shape anymore because it's allowed.
Yeah.
Up to, $999?
Something like that.
Hell, you can get yourself, what is it? ONN 85-inch flat screen for like $600.
I was commenting not last night, but the night before. It's like, man, all these people, they don't have to go to work on Monday morning. No, of course not, because they're lazy, degenerate criminals. And again, the dishonesty in the media, calling these people protesters. They're not protesters. They're shitbags They are degenerate shitbags with an IQ of about what I scraped off my shoe, and they're looking for reasons, they're looking for justification to engage in degenerate shitbaggery. And there are plenty of Democrats out there, including Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, who would like nothing more than to have that level of unrest, because here's why. It fuels the narrative that Donald Trump is this fascist Nazi, number one, and number two, just like Gavin Newsom, they believe that somehow, some way, this is going to catapult them to victories in the next election cycle, whether it's, in the midterms or during the presidential election. And I got to be honest with you.
I'm glad you brought up Newsom, because we have an excellent clip of his new ad as he runs for president. Mr. Producer, can you go ahead and throw that up there? Because this is something that I think the average person in America should see. This is Gavin Newsom. He wants to be president so damn bad, and he wants to use this shit to catapult him to infamy around the globe.
American dream and the California dream. There's no Alabama dream. Eat your heart out, Texas, Tennessee, and Florida.
That's me right there. Escape from L.A.
So, obviously that was something that he was talking about. It is superimposed over the footage from the from the L.A. riots.
But he's excusing it. He's excusing it.
No, he wants it.
Yeah, he's making it. And you know what? The left has been they've been clamoring for their opportunity to trash the Trump administration. And while, look, I don't agree with everything that Trump does. He just said he wanted to, put people in prison for burning the flag. I disagree with burning the flag. I think you should be punched in the face when you do it, especially when you do it in front of a veteran. I think you deserve a good ass whooping for it. I don't think that we should be weaponizing government in order to get rid of speech that we disagree with. It's already constitutionally protected free speech, according to the Supreme Court. It's been the case for decades. But Gavin Newsom, the shitbag that he is, the governor of California, the worst state in the country as far as governance goes. And I just had this great conversation with a friend of mine, Aja Smith, who ran for Congress out in California. She goes, all of California is not like this. Not even all of LA is like this. But I was like, yeah, but the downside is, this is what comes out of LA, and this is what the politicians on the left are supporting. They can't even stand up. Oh, the only Democrat to be able to condemn what's going on happens to be John Fetterman. What world are we living in where the guy that I remember we were all running ads saying this guy is off his rocker, should never be in the House, should never be in D.C.
Well, he's
happens
daring
to be the last
to
reasonable Democrat,
he's
even remotely
daring
left.
to challenge the Democrats. I want to talk about that flag burning issue here. So this is I'm gonna close that out. Let's see. Headline, Fox News, Trump vows consequences for, quote, animals burning American flags in L.A., slams those waving other countries' flags. President floating a 1-year jail sentence for L.A. rioters burning American flags, quote, automatic. From the article, President Donald Trump slammed anti-ICE protesters in Los Angeles who he described as, quote, animals for carrying flags of other countries and burning the American flag amid their efforts to protest federal deportation actions. Trump also floated the potential of imposing criminal penalties, specifically a 1-year jail sentence for burning the American flag during comments at Fort Bragg Tuesday afternoon commemorating the U.S. Army's 250th anniversary. As I've said before, folks, I am an equal opportunity excoriator. When you're right, you're right. And when you're wrong, you're wrong. And I got to be honest, this is not something that I ever want to see as disgusting and as reprehensible as I find somebody burning the American flag. That flag and the rights that go with that flag, the rights that are protected, those are rights that were paid for in blood, and it is the right to freedom of expression. Now, freedom of expression comes in a variety of different forms. The First Amendment, God bless it for what it is. Freedom of assembly, freedom of expression, freedom of speech. And I support wholeheartedly freedom of expression and freedom of assembly and freedom of speech. But what I don't support is criminal thuggery. I don't support looting. I don't support destruction of private property. I don't support destruction of public property. I don't support unlawful assemblies and unlawful gatherings. And I do not support assault and batteries, either on private citizens or members of law enforcement and first responders, fire, EMS. And that includes ICE agents. You don't like ICE? Great. Go and get yourself into an elected position, and if it's a constitutional motion, then make your laws. But it doesn't give you the right to engage in criminal thuggery on the streets. Period. End of story. And I got to be honest with you. When I see these people, these animals, they're not protesters, they're criminals. And when I see these protesters taking rubber bullets, when I see these protesters taking 37 millimeter and 40 millimeter foam, rubber and foam projectiles, I'm all for it. Lock their asses up. And, people, Gavin Newsom, very, very quick to condemn Trump for bringing in the National Guard, bringing in the Marines. Now, we can have a conversation about what the scope and limitations of their duties and their responsibilities and their jurisdiction happens to be, and we can get into that at a later point in time. But the bottom line is that Trump saw what happened in the Pacific Northwest. Trump saw what happened in places like Minneapolis. He watched cities burn. And what he's not doing is allowing that to take hold in LA. And I, for one, say, you know what? Good. More of it. Start showing force. Start using force. Use the force that is necessary to get these assholes to disperse, to realize that you're not going to go out there and have a temper tantrum. Now, I want to hearken back to about, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Do you remember standing in the line at the supermarket, watching the 5-year-old have a temper tantrum because mom wouldn't buy him the candy bar? And so he throws the temper tantrum, and what happened? Mom gave in. And people would say, and I distinctly remember an example where this happened. Somebody actually said out loud, God help us when these people grow up. Well, congratulations. You are seeing the sum total of that, the end result of that. This is what happens when people who have never had parents kick their asses suddenly now grow up and think that the way that they get what they want to facilitate change, to facilitate dialogue, to make changes in their community is to go out and have a temper tantrum. Well, guess what? Your parents didn't kick your ass when you were a kid. So now it's time for somebody else to kick your ass, and it's not with love and nurture. It's with the intention to send a very clear message. Your behavior is not warranted. Your behavior will not be tolerated. And think twice before you decide to do this again. Your thoughts?
You know what? I'm a staunch supporter of free speech. You want to stand while ICE is arresting criminal, illegal aliens, and yes, you are a criminal if you are an illegal alien. You don't have to commit an accessory crime on top of it. You are a criminal by your very nature of existing in the United States. You break laws every single day to remain in the United States illegally. That said, you have a problem. You want to protest our immigration system. You want to protest against ICE. Stand on the side of the damn road with the sign. You can hurl insults. I don't care. But as soon as you interfere with that arrest, you deserve to be arrested. You deserve to be arrested. As soon as you decide to assault an officer, you deserve to have your ass kicked. I used to be sympathetic towards these people. And I understand. You want to escape the narcos in Ecuador and Guatemala and Mexico and wherever the hell you come from. I understand that. But now you come here, you take up services that American citizens should be getting. You stand at the front of every line. You get everything on the planet hurled at you and for your own benefit at the cost of American citizens, and then have the balls to wave a Mexican flag. If you like Mexico so damn much, get the hell out and go back.
Well, the bottom line is this. Nobody loves Mexico quite as much as somebody who refuses to go home.
Yeah. That's pretty much where I'm at right now. And you know what? Like I said, I used to be sympathetic. I'm just not sympathetic anymore. My patience is worn thin. You know what? All 30 million illegal aliens in this country, get the hell out of here. Don't quote to me the 11 million illegal aliens by Pew Research. That is bull. That's not including gotaways. That's not including multiple surges. That 11 million number has existed since the 1990s and somehow never goes up, despite massive surges in caravans at the border, massive encounters in Border Patrol estimating for every one-day encounter that up to 2 got away. That's not, it's just asinine that we're even continuing to have this conversation as if being an illegal immigrant gives you some sort of right to exist in another person's country. This is like I said on my podcast. You don't get to come into my house and tell me that you belong there and then reach into my refrigerator and grab a beer and then expect me to not shoot your ass and kick you right back out the front door. No, I'm not going to hand you a beer. No, I'm not inviting you to stay for dinner. Get the hell out. You don't belong here. You came in here illegally. I just don't care anymore.
Well, I think the big issue here is that is the very sense of entitlement that these people operate with. Now, one of the interesting things here, these ICE raids, and again, these ICE raids are targeting people who are existing criminals or who have with criminal records, or people that have decided to no show to court hearings. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I mean, it's not like they're rounding up. It's not like they're rounding up family members. And you know what? Let me address that.
Oh, and they're saying that they're going to their workplace too.
Hold on. Let them go to the workplace. Yeah. There was some. You know, of course, we always have to tug at the heartstrings. This is the low hanging fruit for the intellectually impotent. The people that are watching the CNN and the MSNBC and the drive-by legacy media that can't think independently, but who can only emotionally react and respond. And they're prompted by emotional stories. So now we're going to fly this story about a young girl whose father was taken away from her because he was an illegal with a criminal record. Well, I hate to tell you this, but all across the country on a daily basis, there are children who are without mothers and who are without fathers because their mothers and fathers chose to engage in criminal behavior. And a result of the criminal behavior is to be arrested, to be introduced to the criminal justice system, and then to be incarcerated in local county correctional facilities or imprisoned either in state correctional facilities or federal correctional facilities. That is what happens when you are a criminal. Your family loses out.
And let me be clear for the left, all right? This isn't a race issue. You see that, the brown skin and all that stuff. This isn't
Man, you always got to play the race card, don't you?
I do. But this isn't a race issue. This is an illegal immigration issue. This is a we have laws issue. This is a don't riot in my goddamn streets issue. It's really simple. You assault law enforcement, I hope law enforcement puts a beating on you. I really do. You go around burning down cities, I hope you get gut checked. I hope the Bloods and Crips walk their butts out in the middle of Rodeo Drive, in the middle of these protests, and start putting you fools down. I really do. There's no friggin' black and brown unity on this one. I'm done with it.
I do have to admit,
we're not a part of your shit. You had no problem coming into our communities, pushing us out of our communities, taking our jobs, taking our services, threatening us, bringing your narco crap to USA. I have no problem kicking your asses right back out. Get the hell out.
833-603-8255. The phone lines are open if you'd like to be a part of the program tonight. 833-603-8255. You can let your voice be heard. All right, so this is not an operation that is limited exclusively to the West Coast and to California. There have been ICE raids all over the country. Now, a couple of things here, and I did mention earlier, the lovely communist mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu, has decided to weigh in on the conversation by calling the ICE agents the secret police. Number one, alluding to the fact that somehow they're the Gestapo and the Stasi, the equivalent of the Stasi from East Germany.
I'm so sick of invoking Hitler.
Well, I mean, it's every conversation eventually winds up, you're Hitler, I'm Hitler, you're a Nazi, I'm a Nazi. Everybody's a Nazi. You know, it's everybody that I don't like is a Nazi. So let's put that aside. Unless you're killing 6 million people here. And the bottom line is that Trump is not a Nazi. It's not fascism. It's called holding people accountable for choices that they've made. That's called being a responsible member of society. But I digress. Michelle Wu, and I think we have an article here. I want to play. Is it a video or is it? It is a video. All right, so we're going to play a video here real quick of the illustrious and well-spoken communist mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu. This will be entertaining and interesting.
I don't know of any police department that routinely wears masks. We know that there are other groups that routinely wear masks. NSC 131 routinely wears masks.
Mayor, just to clarify, are you comparing ICE, you said, to NSC 131, the neo-Nazi group? Are you comparing them to a neo-Nazi group?
What I said is that Boston Police and no police department that I know of at the local level routinely wears masks.
All right. So let's explain a couple of things here. If you're watching the videos, the live videos of the unrest in not only Los Angeles, but also Santa Ana, there was a big protest there. That was kind of more of a protest. It's always interesting that, generally speaking, they're peaceful protests up until the sun sets. And this is when, like rats, these vermin scurry out of whatever little corners they're hiding in and decide to, under the cover of darkness, engage in their thuggery, their shitbaggery. Let's just call it what it is, their criminal actions. But if you're watching the live video, you will notice that the police officers are being pelted with a variety of different things. Now, one of the things is to throw bottles, the plastic water bottles. Sometimes they're glass bottles, but they throw water bottles, the soft plastic water bottles, at police officers. Okay? Now, there are many, many instances where those bottles are not filled with water. Take a guess at what they're filled with. Urine, amongst other things. So in situations where now you have mobs of unruly people that are literally throwing and flinging bottles of human waste at them, and they are also using pepper spray and bear spray, which is commercially available in California, it would make sense that law enforcement officers would wear something to shield their eyes, their nose, and their mouth from potential human waste that's being flung at them. Now, I hate to break that. Maybe nobody's ever flung shit at you, Michelle Wu. Maybe it's time somebody did. And maybe, just maybe, when you get what we all believe you secretly want, which is to have that type of unrest in Boston, then maybe your police officers will start wearing masks. And no, because they're not trying to hide their identities. And no, they're not doing it because they're Nazis or they're Gestapo or that they're the Stasi equivalent from East Germany. It's because of personal protection. Personal protection from the very people that your communist leftist policies empower.
I do have to add one note there. A lot of it is to hide their identities for the specific purpose, or for the specific reason that the left has been attempting to dox ICE agents, and that these ICE agents, when their identities are confirmed, have received death threats from narcos in LA and south of the border, and that we have criminals in this country who have taken it upon themselves to try and assault and murder ICE officers and Border Patrol agents when they're doing their job in deporting criminal illegal aliens and illegal aliens as a whole. Like there is a difference between the ones who are constantly victimizing American citizens and the people who come over here illegally. But I don't care whether you have a criminal record or not. If you're an illegal alien, I want you deported. I just don't care anymore. I'm done with it. So here in that regard, yes, they are trying to cover their faces for their own protection, not just from, having feces and human waste thrown at them, but another tactic is they've been filling these water bottles, they've been freezing them so that they're throwing a rock solid object at you, but then after the fact, when it comes time for, cleanup or for investigations, it looks like a frozen bottle, like a thawed out water bottle. And the other issue is they're filling it with hot pepper sauce. So they're filling the water bottles with hot pepper sauce or habanero peppers mixed in with the water, so that it has the same effect as if they were to hit you with pepper spray.
So, again, I mentioned that this is not something that is exclusive to the West Coast. Here on the East Coast and down in Massachusetts, there has been an ongoing initiative down there, Operation Patriot, which, to the best of my knowledge, is up to close to 2,000. And I'm just looking to verify that number. Approximately 2,000 people have been apprehended in ICE, CBP, and HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, sweeps down there in the Granite State. Now, of course, in the Bay State, because, of course, Massachusetts is a sanctuary state. So we have just a couple of the high flyers here. These are the stellar performers. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the people who Democrats put above you. These are the people that Democrats are advocating for. They don't care about you because there isn't a single damn policy that Democrats espouse or put forth that has ever been beneficial for the citizens, the legal residents of this country. It's to protect degenerate criminal scum like, and I digress, but I go into it, Eswin Uriel Castro, a Mexican national with convictions for child molestation and being armed with a dangerous weapon with previous arrests for robbery and domestic violence. He has been previously deported.
Rolando Enriquez, Filipino national with convictions for rape, assault, burglary, and theft.
Cielo Bibar Ubaldo, a Mexican national with convictions for sex with a minor, narcotics violations, and hit and run. He, too, was previously deported. Amazing how he finds his way back into the United States.
Anastasio Salinas, a Nicaraguan national with convictions for domestic violence, hit and run, and previous arrest for willful cruelty to a child. And yes, he was deported and managed to find his way back into the United States.
Juan Antonio Flores Felician, a Mexican national with convictions for burglary, possession of stolen property, and receiving stolen property. He too, oh, you guessed it, kids, previously deported.
Jaskar Aslambekov, a Russian national recently detained for credit card fraud in government assistance programs. Yes, deported and managed to find his way back into the United States.
Miguel Angel Palafox Montes, a Mexican national with convictions for grand theft, narcotics violations, and identity theft, with previous arrests for battery and burglary. And guess what? Oh, that's right, previously deported.
Crisadad Toy, an Indonesian national with convictions for narcotics, driving under the influence, and illegal entry. Yes, breaking into somebody's house. Yes, he found his way back into the United States as well.
Jordan Mauricio Meza Escobar, a Honduran national with previous arrest for distribution of heroin and cocaine. Oh, and as if that's not enough, that's right, kids, he's a member of the Slapaho tribe. Domestic violence charges.
Yep, Francisco Arguello, a Mexican national with previous arrest for grand theft, larceny, and possession of a prohibited weapon. Yes, an illegal alien with possession of a weapon and committing larceny, and he found his way back in the United States under the Biden administration.
And we'll just wrap it up with Russell Gomez Zul, a Mexican national arrested for assaulting federal officers during the riots. This, ladies and gentlemen, are the people that your Democrat politicians put ahead of you. These people moved to the front of the line. They get the rights that you fight for every single day. Pissed off? Good. You should be. 833-603-8255 if you'd like to let your voice be heard. We're going to take a very, very quick break. Much more of a fiery and impassioned Granite State Live coming up right after this commercial break. Don't go away.
United We Stand, A Marine's Fight. Written by Julian Aceyard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Aceyard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble.
Would you rather spend time with family and friends in the pool or at the barbecue rather than landscaping your yard? Well, Augusta Lawn Care is here to help you with all of your landscaping needs. Proudly serving southern New Hampshire, we handle everything. Weekly mowing, spring and fall cleanups, bush trimming, mulch installs, lawn treatments, aeration, dethatching, and even snow plowing and salting when the dreaded winter hits. Call Augusta Lawn Care today and let your yard be the best looking yard on the block. Call 603-331-4768. Augusta Lawn Care, locally owned, professionally done. Call 603-331-4678 or visit us online at augustalawncareservices.com/Londonderry. That's augustalawncareservices.com/Londonderry.
Not everyone can get up every day and look for ways to piss people off. But here at GraniteRock.com, we do that almost every day. I can't tell you how many times someone's lost their SHIT and threatened to end us. But we're still here, pissing people off. It's almost like we enjoy it. And we've been doing it since 2006. That's almost 2 decades of news, politics, and opinion, and now podcasts, and we're just getting started. We believe in principles before parties and politicians. We defend free markets and individual liberty, and if that makes you mad, it makes us smile. We're like Grandma after she stopped caring what other people thought. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive.
Sometimes we forget we live in one of the most beautiful states in the country. This summer, vacation right here and discover your new.
This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
Granite State Live, your home for generic bump music. That's right, because our producer didn't pay the ASCAP bill, evidently. I don't know. It's pretty good. That was pretty jazzy. I do like that.
It's YouTube, man.
It's
It's YouTube. They don't care.
Yeah, no. If we try to post any of the show archives on YouTube, it's virtually impossible to do that because of copyrights. Even when you pay BMI and ASCAP, that's the music mafia.
That's because YouTube is evil.
Well,
that's just evil. They just don't like good music. That's what I'm going with.
It doesn't matter what kind of social media. Listen, social media hates you, and the relationship, especially with, if you're a leftist, man, you love big government, and so that's perfect for you. That's your utopia. But if you're a mainstream, just a normal, everyday, average person, or if you're on the right side of the aisle, your relationship with social media is kind of like that cyclical domestic violence thing. You know, the one where the spouse just beats the tar out of you every single day,
but
and
they
yet
love
you
you.
refuse to live because you refuse to leave. You absolutely refuse to leave, and you come up with excuses about why the relationship isn't so bad yet that you have to leave, and you justify sticking around for another day. So congratulations, keeping that cycle of social media domestic violence going. Yeah, so I don't really give a rat's ass about YouTube. But one of the things that I do absolutely give a rat's ass about is keeping our first responders safe. And that's why I wanted to have an opportunity to have our next guest on. He is the founder, the president, and the chief executive officer of Invest USA. You can check them out at investusa.org. That's investusa.org, a 501c3 nonprofit partnering with the grassroots community to provide body armor for first responders at absolutely no cost to either the office officer or their agency. It gives us great pleasure to welcome to the program Michael Letts. Great to have you back. I had you on several years ago, actually, on my terrestrial radio show. And so it's great to see you. And now we're not doing a radio show now. We're doing video, so we can see you as well, too. Welcome.
Well, that may be a scary thing, but quite frankly, I think we'll take the risk. But always a delighted to be with you, and thank you for what you're doing to make sure America hears the truth. We need it now more than ever.
Well, absolutely. And, it's kind of amazing that when you think about, something as simple as body armor, or you think about body cameras, for instance, that there's a lot of agencies out there that just don't have the funding to provide the basic supplies to their officers, especially something like a bulletproof vest. I still cringe. I do see from time to time, and I'm that's my day job. I am a high liability trainer for law enforcement. So active shooter response, tactical counterterrorism, all that fun stuff. And it amazes me when I see an officer on the beat with no vest on. It's like, what are you thinking? And sometimes it's, the agency doesn't provide it for us.
Well, unfortunately, let me give you a little quick overview. And we started this in 1993. That's 32 years ago. At that time, 52% of officers across the country had no vest at all, period. And we were able to get that down to 19%. But then, of course, the cartels and the sex traffickers, the child sex traffickers, etc., decided to go a different route. They decided, instead of being ashamed of their criminality, they would be proud of it and advertise it by using AK-47s and long-range rifles. Well, if you know anything about body armor, you know a concealable vest. That's the ones we initially purchased. That was the only technology available at the time. It will stop a pistol, a sidearm, but a long-range rifle will go right through it like you're not wearing a vest at all. Mm-hmm. And so we had to stop, create new technology called active shooter vests. These vests have titanium plates in them, stop anything that's available, both pistol and rifle, that's out on the market today. Unfortunately, 90% of officers on the street today do not have this technology. Now, bear in mind, these are the same American heroes that we're asking today to go out and help defend this country against the terrorist attacks that are unfolding across this country. What do you mean? Well, quite frankly, these are not just simple little protests that are happening, whether it's in LA, New York, Atlanta, and the list is expanding. They want to get to 1,000 or 1,500 cities over the next few days. These are actually nothing but riots. These are paid people that are insurrectionists that have determined to do everything possible to destroy America from within. And quite frankly, I laugh when I was on one of my shows, this one national show, when the opposition said these are peaceful demonstrations. I said anybody that would take a big cinder block or a large chunk of it, throw it off an underpass when you have law enforcement vehicles flying down the road to respond to a call, doing 70, 80 miles an hour, deliberately try to hit the windshield. If it hits the windshield where the driver's at, he's dead. Mm-hmm. So these now charges have been escalated to attempted murder of first responders all across the country. That's not a peaceful protest. That is an insurrectionist riot that is trying to do everything they can to destroy and to harm the American people. We will deal with them accordingly. But our first responders are part of what's being put on the street, besides the active military and the guards. So they need to make sure they're protected. They don't have that right now.
Well, one of the things we were actually talking about this off air prior to the beginning of the show. I'm surprised, given the number of illegally owned, illegally possessed firearms in Southern California, especially with all the narco gangs and the street gangs and everything else like that. I mean, shootings are a daily occurrence. They don't even make the newspaper anymore. Unless it's an attack on a law enforcement officer or somebody who is of prominence. I mean, the LA Times doesn't publicize shootings anymore. So I'm really shocked, and I'm curious what your thoughts are about this. Why do you think that there hasn't been instances where law enforcement officers, ICE, CBP, HSI, National Guardsmen are actually being targeted with firearms?
Well, quite frankly, it's part of their narrative. I mean, we've got their intel. I've served in the intel community, and quite frankly, this is how their plan is. So what is their plan, their narrative? Their narrative is, let's get America to believe that this is nothing but poor people who are trying to get a better lifestyle. They're being abused by a tyrant such as Trump, and they're being forced into exile because of an uncompassionate America who should be known for their compassion. Now, that's what they want you to believe. If they came out and began to shoot and fire, they would lose that narrative so quickly, they'd never gain it back. So they're playing their cards to begin with to try to create that narrative. The flip side, notice the narrative they're trying to put on our troops and on our first responders, on our law enforcement. These are aggressive, fully tactical gear people that are trying to harass, intimidate, beat up, and do everything they can to put these people in their place, shall we say. And so what they'll do is they'll play that narrative for a while. Then as it begins to not work, obviously, because we're going to continue to round up these criminals, and that's what they are, they're criminals, they'll begin to then move to an additional method, which will be that you'll start seeing shootings. And then they'll come back and say, hey, we told you what they were doing all along. Now they're just having to defend ourselves. They're trying to gain their American conscience deceptively, and I think the American people have caught on, and they know what's going on, and it's just not going to work.
Well, we're seeing them dig into, calling everybody who's involved, who's working with ICE or working with law enforcement. You see them calling everyone a Nazi now. That's the left's go-to for the past decade has been to call everyone they disagree with a Nazi. And yet, funny enough, the Nazis did not deport people. They weren't trying to arrest people. They were eradicating people. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to deport criminal illegal aliens back to their country of origin and illegal aliens abroad back to their countries. It's really simple. But they just can't let the narrative spin. It seems to be about trying to recapture some sort of political or moral high ground that they've abandoned over the past 4 or 5 years.
You have to understand, they want power. They didn't like it losing it here in the last few months. And it's desperate for them to gain it back. Why is it so desperate? Well, let's take a look at all that we have uncovered just in the last 120 days of the money laundering, the corruption, the depth. Shocking how deep this corruption runs in this country. I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars being stole from the Treasury. We're talking about abuse of power unlike anything we ever imagined out of agencies before. They want that power back, A. And second of all, they don't want you to know what they've been doing with it. So they're desperate to do whatever's necessary to turn the narrative and turn the power back, including trying to play and be deceptive with the American people, which is what they're doing as we speak today in cities across the country.
Unfortunately, I think this is where we thought that the Doge cuts were going to cut out the USAID funding and a lot of the backdoor funding of these organizations. And unfortunately, a lot of that funding is right back in this budget bill that just got passed. And you're going to see, we're going to see a summer of love. They're going to continue to ratchet up.
Oh, there's no question. I think what's interesting, the president issued an executive order, as you may or may not be aware of yesterday afternoon. We have a list from Ukraine of money that has gone back that was supposed to be foreign aid for Ukraine, billions and billions of dollars, or armaments that never arrived there that were sold on the black market. Of course, the cartels picked them up. They've got plenty of cash. And quite frankly, there's a nice extensive list, well documented, that is in possession now of our government. They just haven't done anything with it yet. Why haven't they done anything? Because on that list, there's 326 current members of Congress. And quite frankly, if that comes out, that's treason. You cannot steal money and be bribed when you're a sitting member of Congress, put money in an appropriations bill that goes back to an NGO that you get paid with. That's called indictable offenses. And they're scared to death. You imagine what will happen in this country if 326 members of Congress are all marched out in handcuffs? A lot of implications, but it's coming down the road. And it's coming quickly.
That couldn't come soon enough, I'll tell you.
Wouldn't that be a holiday right there?
That would be fantastic. Michael Letts,
founder. I plan on coming to Connecticut and celebrate with you when that does.
Michael Letts, founder, president, and CEO of Invest USA, joins us. It's a national grassroots nonprofit organization that does fundraisers through educational, public relations, sponsorships, and other programs to provide bulletproof vests for police forces. Again, thanks so much for joining us tonight. I do have a question for you here. So, Kristi Noem came out, went on the record here, and of course my computer is going to freeze up, but saying this is how it was described. She's issuing a chilling warning to protesters. Again, they're not protesters, they're criminals. But she said, quote, "We're coming in and doing what the president has said he is going to do. The more that people conduct their violence, And it's, of course, my screen is going crazy here. The more that people conduct violence against law enforcement officers, boy, we are going to hit them back, and we're going to hit them back harder than we ever have before. Juan, do you have the video of that by chance?
That Mayor Bass has done absolutely nothing about. Listen, I served with her in Congress before she was ever mayor, and she is a train wreck of a mayor now that is endorsing these kind of activities, has allowed her city to be completely devastated with crime, and now she's holding press conferences talking about the fact that people have the right to peacefully protest and that they're a city of immigrants. Well, they're not a city of immigrants, they're a city of criminals, because she has protected them for so many years. And so we're coming in and doing what the president has said that he's going to do, and he's going to allow people to live in a safe community again. And we're going to use the authority that he has as president of the United States to conduct these operations. And the more that people conduct violence against law enforcement officers, boy, we're going to hit them back, and we're going to hit them back harder than we ever have before. And we conducted more operations today than we did the day before. And tomorrow we're going to double those efforts again. The more that they protest and commit acts of violence against law enforcement officers, the harder ICE is going to kind of come after them, because these people are patriots. These ICE officers are people who are fighting for their country, and I'm so proud of them. They've acted with dignity. They've acted with grace under stressful situations. And when they've been disrespected, they've responded appropriately under the law to make sure that they were treating every single individual the same and making sure that due process was followed and that they were doing their jobs.
So, you know, and people have played that clip, and I've had a couple of people that have sent me that clip, and they've asked, and this is the question that's going around on the domestic violence dumpster fire called social media. Is this what you voted for? You damn right this is what I voted for.
Exactly.
In fact, I didn't vote for somebody to sit back and behave like a lapdog. I voted for a pit bull, somebody who was going to get in there, who was going to root out the corruption, who was going to root out the cancer, who is going to take out the garbage. Your thoughts?
No, you're exactly right. Christy's a great friend. She's been a great colleague. And quite frankly, what she's saying, and I want to make sure all of your listeners clearly heard this, is that she's taken not only her resources from a federal law enforcement standpoint, but the president has now authorized active military troops as well as National Guard troops. What we're saying is we're going to take every resource that this great nation has, and we have the greatest resources in the world, and we're going to apply them to making sure that law and order is reestablished. So you're on the losing end if you're on the other side. You better give it up now and figure out what you're going to do for the rest of your life, because there's not going to be a life of crime in this country anymore.
I was curious if you happened to pick up on something. So during January 6th, you saw a lot of National Guard troops that were in and around Washington, D.C. And one of the things that was very interesting, and I don't know, maybe it's just because this is where I tend to look, but I recall seeing a whole bunch of people with rifles with the bolts open and no magazines. Now, I have not seen enough close-ups now of the National Guardsmen. I haven't seen a lot. I haven't seen any close-ups, to be honest with you. Have you seen anything? Are they walking around with empty rifles as a show of force, or are these guys locked and loaded and ready for party time?
They are locked and loaded.
Good.
And quite frankly, the president that we have, the new sheriff in town, would never put his men in harm's way without the ability to defend themselves.
Good.
Those days are over.
Good.
Well, that's thank you for coming on, because this is something that we've watched it devolve. And the last thing I want to see is another, 2 years of riots every time the weather gets warm. And I'm sick. We were talking before you came on. My sympathy for illegal aliens at this point is gone. Any sympathy I had is gone. As soon as you get to the point where you're burning down cities, you're assaulting people in the streets, you're assaulting law enforcement, you're refusing to abide by the laws in this country, and then you dare to tell us that we owe you something for it. I'm just done.
Yeah.
One thing. The sad part about it is they used them as a tool. I mean, the left didn't care about illegal immigrants. They never have. They've used them as a pawns to accomplish their end means, and they do that with their own members of Congress. If they don't, you're their best friend today. If you don't cross their path, they jump on you like piranhas. They're after you by tomorrow. So that's just the way that policy works for them.
And we saw that in the first term when Donald Trump tried to broker a deal with the Democrats to allow the legalization of the 1.8 million DACA. He actually went overboard. I believe it was roughly 900,000 DACA recipients, and he was willing to give them 1.8 million of those who weren't in the program that would otherwise be eligible for the program, and they turned it down. All he wanted was funding for the border wall and to secure our borders.
Right.
And they turned it down, and then these illegal aliens ended up protesting at Democrat rallies, getting up in front of Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi's, and getting up and stealing the microphone in front of them and shouting them down and destroying them over the simple fact that you just proved you don't actually care about illegal aliens. It's just an issue for you to run your election on.
You're right. We are at war in this country. We need to realize that this is not protest. We are actually in a war situation. This is a military operation dealing with these rioters, those who have insurrectionists who are determined to destroy us from within. We're not going to let it happen. This is a new sheriff. You cross the wrong line, and this sheriff, when you cross the line, we don't give you the chance to go back.
I think this really comes down to, and what I've said in previously, and I've been saying for years, is that all of this is about abolishing capitalism, this idea of the great replacement and stuff. It's not about replacing white people. It's about replacing Americans. It's about replacing anybody with uniquely American ideals, attachment to our foundational principles, attached to the foundation of this country, our founding documents, the culture of this country. If you can replace enough of us and you can affect the culture overall throughout the entire United States, you can eventually get to a point where you can get your intersectional Marxist proletariat revolution.
And they will have won because, quite frankly, I tell people this all across the country. If America falls, that's it. There's no other place to go.
Yep. Well, not only that, too. I mean, if America falls, then we're ripe for the picking because there are other nations that, like the vultures in the wings, are waiting to see that moment of weakness that they can exploit. The Chinese, the North Koreans, the Russians. These are all of these nations that hate us. Would love nothing more than to see us buckle from within. I was thinking about it. I'm opening the show up tonight, and I give the date out. Today is June 10th, 2025, and I'm looking at this from a couple of different perspectives. Number one, President Trump is not out of office until January of 2029. That's the first thing. But just looking at this right now, of course, when the weather is nice, this is, and from being in law enforcement, as soon as the weather turns, this is when the criminals, this is when the dirt bags start to come out. And they love warm nights because under the cover of darkness, they can engage in the shitbaggery that they are known for. So looking at this from the perspective of this is June 10th. We're not even in summer yet. We're in late spring. Where do you see this going by July or August? How bad do you think things actually have the potential right now of getting within the next 30, 45, 60 days?
Well, I can tell you, we've seen in their intel. Quite frankly, they want to make this a summer of love on steroids. That's their goal. That's their objective. Now, we stand at a very crucial crossroads at the moment. Either we're going to deal with it head on, with great aggressive force and put it into it, or we're in for some rough months ahead. And quite frankly, this president, why do you think he's done what he has done with using active troops, with going on ahead and declaring today the Insurgency Act is in place? He is determined we're going to meet it head on with everything this nation has to offer. And I don't think anybody in the world knows just how much this nation has to offer. They're fixing to find out.
I was just going to ask, what do you think leading into 2026 election cycle this is going to have effect on, House and Congress, whether we retain the House and we're able to keep these policies in place and keep that hard line in the sand in regard to these protests? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, in the debate we had in the program earlier today, quite frankly, I said, look, they're trying to portray themselves. They're calling these rallies, the protests, no king. We don't have a king. We don't have a monarchy. We don't have a dictator. We need to get rid of impeach Donald Trump. I said, you know what? People don't care about that. They care about being safe. They want to know that when I walk on the street and take my family for a walk in the evening time and walk the dog, I'm going to come back to my home in one piece. That's what they care about. You are putting Americans at risk. That is no compassion. That is no sense of duty to this country. And they're going to reject you loud and clearly, even worse than they did the last time. In 24, 26 is going to be a massacre.
I'm actually glad you brought up this No Kings thing, and I would encourage people to check this out, not because I'm driving traffic to the website, but I want people to take a look at this. NoKings.org is the website, NoKings.org. And at the top of the address bar, it says attend. You can click on that. You get a pop-up map, and as you zoom in, I mean, I'm looking here in New Hampshire. The No Kings... this is all on Saturday the 14th. So, I mean, there are rallies, and of course, they're in the blue cities here in New Hampshire. Keene has one. Of course, New London has one. Concord has one. It's interesting. Most of these are 12 o'clock until 3 o'clock, except for Peterborough, New Hampshire, which is 12 to 1:30, because all of the 65-year-old silver, short-cropped-haired, hyphenated last-name Subaru-driving, tree-hugging, yogurt-flinging, ex-retired teachers, awfuls, angry white female liberals, can't stand outside for 3 hours, so they have to reduce it to 90 minutes. These degenerate leftist scumbags that they are. But you know what? I really hope that there are counter-protesters. I hope that there's Americans carrying AR-15s and flags that stand up and say, you know what? You have a right to protest. You have a right to speak your mind, but you dare step out of line, and there are going to be some pretty stark, to use a New Hampshire-friendly term, stark consequences for your actions. Because live free or die, I don't know where you are, Mike, but up here, we don't screw around.
Oh, South Carolina doesn't either. We've demonstrated that from the revolution all the way through.
Amen,
Quite frankly,
brother.
let me throw out a couple other quick things. Walmart is part of funding all this is going on across the country.
Why
That
am I not
disappoints me.
surprised?
I knew Sam Walton, but his daughter, Christy, is the one that's putting out hundreds of millions of dollars to fund this thing. So make sure you keep that in mind next time you decide to go to Walmart. Second thing I want to make sure that we understand is that these protests that you see that they're calling protests that are actually insurgents are paid. We've got all the intel. We've seen the ads. They're paying them from $6,500 to $12,500 a day to create havoc in these areas. So quite frankly, they're trying to get 1,500 to 2,000 protesting rallies all across the country the same day. I don't see that even coming close to happening.
So you had mentioned Walmart, but that was one of the questions that I had. This is not a grassroots organization to get a website up and to get these rallies mobilized across the country in such a short period of time. Is this Walmart money, or is this are these leftist organizations that were granted money through USAID, or where's this money coming from?
Yes.
Is it Soros money?
It's four-part. It comes from Soros. It comes from CCP, Communist Chinese Party. It's coming from Venezuela, from the Maduro government, and it's coming from NGOs, Walmarts, etc. What they have done is, you notice that we're the terrorist network that we have in this country that began to surface at Boulder, Colorado just a few weeks back. They've all decided for once in a lifetime they're going to all try to work together. So anybody with this leftist ideology to destroy this country are now best friends, and they're trying to help feed off of each other to make something major happen. We're not going to give them the chance.
All right. Michael Letts, founder, president, and chief executive officer of Invest USA. I would encourage people to check out your website. Don't waste your time over at No Kings. Go over to investusa.org. That's a worthwhile place to spend some time. And if you're so inclined to make a donation, that's a donation that is going to go to a very, very worthy cause. That is to provide body armor for first responders. Do you also provide body armor as well to medical personnel and fire that are operating in some of your more crime-conscious communities?
Let me give two quick examples. In New York City, we lost 9 firefighters who got to the scene too early, were ambushed. In Charleston, South Carolina, we lost 2 paramedics who got to the scene before law enforcement did and were shot in the line of duty. So yes, we provide it to all first responders now in necessity and need. And quite frankly, we're getting requests from all over the country from citizens. I'm happy we get everything at a wholesale value. I'm happy to add them to the list if they want to pay for it on a wholesale value to make sure they've got a vest as well, because we're going to do everything we need to do to defend America for our future, for our children and our grandchildren.
All right, Mike, we're going to have you back on soon, and we'll definitely be in touch offline here about a couple of projects. So I appreciate everything that you're doing, sir. God bless. Please stay safe down there in the great state of South Carolina, and we will talk to you again soon.
You live free in New Hampshire. God bless you. God bless America. Keep up telling the truth because it's making a difference.
Thank you, brother. Stay safe. Be well. All right. We're going to take a very, very quick break for top of the hour. When we come back, we're going to be talking about, looting. Because when you're pissed off and you want to send a message to people, there's nothing that sends a message quite like stealing iPhones, AirPods, and flat screen TVs. We're going to be joined by Bruce de Torres, Director of Communications for the American Small Business League. Small business organizations pulling out of places like Los Angeles because they're fed up with the BS. Much more Granite State Live, plus your phone calls and more coming up right after this. Don't go away.
United We Stand, A Marine's Fight. Written by Julian Aceyard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Aceyard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble.
Would you rather spend time with family and friends in the pool or at the barbecue rather than landscaping your yard? Well, Augusta Lawn Care is here to help you with all of your landscaping needs. Proudly serving southern New Hampshire, we handle everything. Weekly mowing, spring and fall cleanups, bush trimming, mulch installs, lawn treatments, aeration, dethatching, and even snow plowing and salting when the dreaded winter hits. Call Augusta Lawn Care today and let your yard be the best-looking yard on the block. Call 603-331-4768. Augusta Lawn Care, locally owned, professionally done. Call 603-331-4678 or visit us online at AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry. That's AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry.
Not everyone can get up every day and look for ways to piss people off. But here at GraniteRock.com, we do that almost every day. I can't tell you how many times someone's lost their SHIT and threatened to end us. But we're still here, pissing people off. It's almost like we enjoy it. And we've been doing it since 2006. That's almost 2 decades of news, politics, and opinion, and now podcasts, and we're just getting started. We believe in principles before parties and politicians. We defend free markets and individual liberty, and if that makes you mad, it makes us smile. We're like Grandma after she stopped caring what other people thought. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive.
Sometimes we forget we live in one of the most beautiful states in the country. This summer, vacation right here and discover your new.
You know what that is? That is the sound of refreshment right there. It's a great flavor, actually. I am a non-compensated spokesperson for Polar Seltzer. This is the Clementine Bramble. And I got to say, man, that is a mighty tasty. You know, I was thinking about this the other day. I have one of those soda streams because I'm just addicted to seltzer water. I don't drink soda, but and so every morning my wife makes this gigantic pot of coffee that is so thick it's like molasses. It's so thick and dark, and it's awesome. And so she drinks the hot coffee and then she puts it in the refrigerator because I like the cold coffee. And I was thinking, and I haven't done this before, and I haven't seen it in a store. Has anybody ever carbonated coffee? If I took my coffee and put it in the soda stream and carbonated it, how would that? It would be a coffee soda. So I'm gonna have to try that.
I bet you Coca-Cola would do it. They have so many different flavors of Coke or Pepsi.
Well, they have like a it's a hybrid. It's I've actually had it, and it's not that bad. It's been a long time since I've actually had Coke products, but excuse me, I just had some spicy sushi, and it's hitting the man. It's not hot. I just swallowed the wrong way. Wow. Yeah, I hear the production team laughing at me right now. And people out there are like, oh my God, he's going to choke to death. This is the day. No, you're not that lucky. Not today.
BBC gang right here. BBC gang right here. We're starting the day with a big black coffee.
Well, show your bottle there.
Oh, yes.
Honestly, I thought Julian was drinking prune juice.
So again,
because it's yellow and purple.
Uncompensated spokesperson for
Cafe Bustelo.
Cafe Bustelo. I love this. I used to drink so many Dunkin' Donuts coffees every damn day that I just got to a point where I was like, you know what? I'm sick of having to drive out to go get Dunkin's, especially with me doing so much work from home. So I just got these. I love it. I get 2 of these. These or the Stoke coffee or whatever it is.
Oh, those are.
Yeah, so I get 2 of these, and they last me all week.
All right, so pro tip, no spicy sushi, either during top of the hour breaks or before the show. All right, welcome to hour number 2 of Granite State Live. Great to have you along on this Tuesday evening, the 10th day of June. Man, we got 11 days before we hit summer, and the summer of love 2020. What is that noise in the background? Okay, yeah, he's gonna take care of that. All right, the Summer of Love here, 2025 style, is kicking off. So we're going to have conversations about that. Hour number 2, we're going to continue the conversation with that. I'm your host, Keith Hansen, the unapologetic contrarian conservative, heavily armed as always, more so now than ever. Never apologizing for my toxic white masculinity. I can't help it, folks. I was born this way. Never apologizing for my Christian faith.
And I'm your co-host, Blue Collar Intellectual, host of the Blue Collar Intellectual podcast, and author of United We Stand, a Marines Fight. And you know what? I'm just here to piss some people off today.
I think we're, judging by some of the comments, I actually don't think we're doing a good enough job pissing people off because it seems like an awful lot of people are agreeing with us.
You know what? That's actually a good tone for the country. It means that we're not insane. We were watching the movie I, Robot, and there's this line where Will Smith goes, "Are you insane if you believe that you're the only you're the last rational person on the planet?" And I was starting to feel that way. But if the comments are saying that the vast majority of people in the country agree with us, then you know what? Maybe there's hope for society yet.
Well, and I think as you start to see more and more and more pushback from the Democrat Party, I actually think that fares very well for both the midterm elections and the presidential election in 2028. Obviously it's been said many, many times, and I think it's absolutely true, man. If Democrats are looking at AOC and saying, well, this is the face and the leadership of our party, boy, the Democrats have much bigger problems than I think even they care to. And I, the other thing too, I got to be honest, here in New Hampshire, what the hell is it with Stephanie Shaheen that suddenly now, oh, you're qualified to be a senator? Who the hell is this?
Didn't she lose an election, a local election in Portsmouth?
So you lost an election? Let's say even if you were a local politician in Portsmouth, of all places. So now you're qualified to be a senator? Hey, Stephanie, go work for your parents, but go bake a cake. Somewhere there's a sandwich that needs to be made. Find yourself a job.
My simple question is, other than the name Shaheen, what lends credibility to her candidacy other than having the last name Shaheen?
The last name Shaheen.
That's what I thought.
And this is one of the things. Americans don't want, whether it's local or on the national level, dynastic politics. We don't want the dynasty of Clinton. The closest we came to that was the Kennedy dynasty. We don't want that. We don't want the Clinton dynasty. We don't want the Sununu dynasty. Thank God we nipped that in the bud.
I don't even want a Don Jr. dynasty. I don't want a Trump dynasty either. I want to see fresh blood, fresh ideas, or you know what? A fresh idea right now would be getting back to the Constitution, what this country was actually founded upon. That would be a fresh idea. We haven't had one of those in 200 years? Why don't we get back to some normalcy, some sense of reality?
Well, it's amazing because you got a whole bunch of protesters now that can quote the Constitution because just like, the devil can quote scripture to suit his own purpose.
You mean misquote the Constitution?
Well, that's exactly what they do. So, but the General Welfare Clause is specifically to empower the WIC program, according to some of these idiots. But it's always interesting that, the leftists will use the very rights that are guaranteed by the Constitution, given by God, and they're using those rights to try to destroy the very nation that guarantees those rights. It's the irony here is not lost. And, again, we've got Bruce de Torres coming up here in just a couple of minutes, talking about this. Well, I'm claiming that it's my First Amendment right to loot a store. It's my First Amendment right to destroy somebody else's property. I'm expressing myself. And I seem to recall the mayor of Baltimore, Maryland, saying that if these people want to protest, we have to give them space to protest. And if they want to destroy, well, we have to give them space to destroy as well. So now you have that actually is what happened. So now you have state-sponsored destruction of both public property and private property. I'm pissed off, so I'm going to go loot me a flat screen TV. And tell me how that makes sense.
The insanity to the insanity of this and the absolute gall. So you're telling me the same Democrats who run every inner city and metropolitan community in the United States, also the same Democrat Party who's selling your properties to private equity firms, the same Democrats who are empowering all these NGOs to come into your communities and buy up property, the same Democrats that could have stood out there at the front of these protests, walked with them and made sure that they stayed peaceful. Because let's be honest, if Maxine Waters or AOC or Jasmine Crockett or any of these, painted fingernail politicians and powder puff faces were to stand out in the front of these damn marches, they wouldn't have got violent because they can't have their actual bodies in danger, right? Mm-hmm. They can't be at the front of the danger. They can't lead from the front. They have to be, you guys go ahead and burn down those communities over there so my buddies in Wall Street can come in and buy, and these private equity firms can buy up these properties and sell them for pennies on the dollar. They can gentrify you out of your own communities. It's Democrat policies at the local, state, and federal level who are constantly doing this. And it's your properties that they're selling. So you wouldn't sell them your properties, so now they're going to burn down the properties you wouldn't sell them so that they can come back and sell them to their buddies in BlackRock and Vanguard.
Well, I mean, in keeping with, the philosophies of communism, there is the term for a certain group of people, the useful idiots.
Yep.
And the Democrats understand, and the progressives and the socialists and the communists, they understand these people are being used. They are being used. They will be discarded. Just as we have learned through history, useful idiots are used and discarded. And it really is truly, it's the same thing that I've accused the NHGOP of doing. It's the mushroom management. You feed them a load of shit, you keep them in the dark, you use them, you cut their heads off, And this is it. This is the playbook of the Democrat Party. And unfortunately, it used to be that there were radical Democrats, and then you had the blue-collar Democrats, the JFK Democrats. But the Democrat Party, and notice I don't say, and Ray Buckley, the pedophile, pederast, scumbag, degenerate head of the New Hampshire Republican Party, accused me of saying, well, you can't even get the name, or New Hampshire, what did I say?
Republicans.
I'm sorry. Well, they're all the same. It's just one branch of the other. But, he accused me, you can't even get our name right. No, Ray, you're not a Democratic organization. We're not going to call you a Democratic organization because there's nothing democratic about you. Look at how Kamala Harris wound up as the Airfingers, quote, nominee, the selectee. There was nothing democratic about that. So you can't even live up to what your name suggests that your political actions would be. But
yep. And on that note, not only are they not democratic, but the whole manufactured black girl magic that they had during her campaign, the manufactured energy around there. These protests aren't even organic. The looting's not even organic. The protesters are paid, the actors are paid, the bricks are being set out, the gas masks are paid for, and then on top of it, the looters are paid to go and loot the damn stores so they can resell the stuff on the black market. All of it, none of it is organic. We're all being played, and they're playing in our face.
All right. With that, I want to jump over to the video line here. We have Bruce de Torres, Director of Communications for the American Small Business League, founded on the principle that small businesses are the backbone. This isn't founded on the principle. This is founded on the fact that the small businesses are indeed the backbone of a vital American economy and should receive a fair portion of the total value of all prime contracts. And they should also be protected as well, too, because unfortunately it's people's businesses that are being destroyed by these people who feel that they have the right to express themselves through destruction of private property. Bruce, thanks so much for joining us on Granite State Live. Welcome.
Thank you, Keith, and thank you, Julian.
Just we're getting a little fired up for you here. So I'm curious what your thoughts are. I mean, this is according to a lot of media outlets now, Los Angeles and San Francisco and San Diego. These are mostly peaceful protests, but it's funny because I see store after store after store after store being looted, being broken into. I think back to the Summer of Love in 2020 where businesses, mom and pop shops were being destroyed. I remember, a black man standing outside of the burnt out shell of his business. This was my family business for years. And you just, he's talking to the, to the rioters. You destroyed this. What kind of message does this send to people who have businesses in large metropolitan areas that are suffering from largely Democrat rule?
Well, along the lines of your previous few minutes, how manufactured this is, how not organic it is, the message is life is very scary. You should stay home with your phone and be happy to plug into the matrix, plug into this digital enslavement. That is the foundational message of such scary, scary scenes. And then it fuels the fight, the endless divide and conquer between both political parties, and any voice that wants to solve problems like an adult gets no airtime. And it's ironic because here we are trying to have the most mature conversation that we possibly can have about it. And it's lamentable, what it says about the media, what it says about the leadership of such a big and important city such as Los Angeles. We just saw this in January with the mismanagement of the response to the fires, to the evidence that came tumbling out that things were moved away to position Los Angeles to suffer to the greatest degree possible when those fires happened. And it's already come out in the feeds that I get that the police, in the first hour or two, people were calling the police in LA on Friday, and there was no response. So, and then there's been tons since Friday, as you've already both alluded to indicate that this is a total setup. So it's breathtaking. The way that we're played, the way that we're socially engineered, the way that we're culturally engineered is breathtaking. And yet it's fascinating because once you look behind the curtain and you discover, oh my Lord, all these events that all my life the media and politicians have been telling me were kind of organic and we just had to respond to them, were set up in order to justify oftentimes police measures and other security and surveillance measures that we wouldn't have tolerated had we not had the equivalent of a false flag. These are not organic attacks, let's call them. So they're not really. It's really a false flag attack, not only on each other and on the businesses, but on the American people and our psyche, to let business as usual go tumbling forward, and the he said she said of the political food fight.
So what are the measures that you would advocate for small business owners? And there was, I don't know if it was your organization or there was another small business organization or organization that represents small businesses that recently pulled out of Los Angeles. So for people that do own businesses, and I keep thinking back to the Rodney King riots. I think it was 1992. That there was there were the Koreans that were standing on top of their rooftops, with rifles, and lo and behold, they were the one business that wasn't being burned down or looted or broken into. I mean, how far would you advocate people go to protect their property, to protect their businesses, to protect their livelihoods, and protect their interests in their community?
Well, just as your average red-blooded American whose father taught me how to handle guns, and I was a member of the NRA, and I really respected weapons as tools. And thankfully, I've not been in a violent situation. I was mugged once at gunpoint, but it stayed calm and nothing got violent. All I can just say is, let your natural human instinct to defend yourself govern you, influenced by your intelligence as to the threat assessment, because sometimes it's just smarter to hand your wallet away and walk away in one piece. So that is such a volatile scenario that's the best that I can say about that. You led by talking about small businesses, and that's what I'm in the business of promoting the advocacy of the group that I work for, the American Small Business League. We're very much in love with small businesses. I could reply to what you mentioned about a small business group leaving LA, but what threat of all we could discuss would you like to pursue?
Well, for me personally, I'm interested in advocating for the law-abiding citizen who is trying to defend their family, who is defending their home, who is defending their business, for the worker who is defending the business that provides them with their paycheck and their livelihood for their business. Now, I've been a serial entrepreneur. I had my first business, believe it or not, when I was 12 years old. I have been a serial entrepreneur and a serial business owner my entire life. And, the one pejorative that gets hurled, well, you're just greedy. You just want to sit back and light cigars with $100 bills. No, I use the $100 bills to buy good cigars. I don't burn money. But that being said, I've been accused of being the greedy business owner. And it's like, no, if I had my choice between putting $300,000 into a Ferrari or putting $300,000 into my business to expand it and grow it and attract talent, and to have that talent now bring my business to new heights and to pay them the maximum salaries and to reward them for the value that they bring, I'm going to take the latter. I'm not concerned about the sports car. I'm concerned about building my business and providing for the employees that work for me. So that being said, I would imagine that people who are working for small businesses that are in the fire line, so to speak, would be concerned about, well, what happens if these assholes decide to go out and torch the business that I work for? Now I'm going to be out of work. Now I'm not going to be able to feed my family because these people who are simply exercising their constitutional rights to loot and burn and rob and steal, and again, there's assault as well in there, have literally destroyed my ability to provide for my family. Those are the people that I'm advocating for and who I am encouraging to stand up and not take any of this shit, but to fight back.
Absolutely, and just common sense justified. It's tragic how lawless things have become really in the last 60, 70 years. I'm something of a historian, amateur historian, and I love history, and particularly the administration of John F. Kennedy, who you mentioned quickly, earlier. So it's a tragedy what has befallen this country to come to this condition where so many areas, LA included, can become so wild and volatile and seem to be handled so ineptly, if not intentionally encouraging the maximum amount of danger and violence and fear. I love your description of how you would manage your resources as you tried to grow and develop your business. The most exciting thing about small businesses, Keith and Julian, that I find most people don't know is a very, very big but simple fact, which is 99.9% of all businesses in America are small businesses. Mm-hmm. And 98% of all businesses in America have less than 100 employees. And the SBA in Washington, Small Business Administration, is the organization who you've seen a headline. They're pulling out of LA in retaliation for LA's defiance of the federal implementation of the immigration controls and things that the administration wants to do to round up illegal aliens. Mm-hmm. Now, this pushes all of our buttons because we accuse the SBA of falsifying, if not just being wrong, deceiving the American people every year by saying that the law is being followed. The law says that 23% of all federal contracts are supposed to go to small businesses. And every year they say, we met the goal, we exceeded the goal, pat on the back, let's talk about loans. And they avoid any scrutiny of what small businesses did you give those contracts to? They won't tell you. It's no longer publicly available because 30 years of legal battles, congressional investigations, and inspector general reports from the SBA itself has shown up to 97% of small business contracts go to the country's biggest business. Mm-hmm. The 1/10 of 1% of companies that do not create jobs when they get those contracts because they're already big. But if 23% of the federal contracts, which is about $345 billion every year, actually went to our small businesses, they would create 2 million new jobs every year on top of the 2 million new jobs that America typically creates every year. So that's our reason for existing. That's the drum we pound. And we ask, excuse me, SBA, you're pulling out of LA because the agency because LA won't help the federal government's entire immigration policies? Well, how come the FBI isn't being pulled out? How come every federal presence isn't being pulled out? Why the SBA? Our biggest concern is we see this as part of a pattern, unfortunately, of the administration actually weakening the SBA, the only agency dedicated to helping the 34.7 million businesses in America that are 99.9% of all businesses. Help me understand that, Keith and Julian.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I actually had a question for you about that. We're coming up on the bottom of the hour here, so I want to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to keep you on for about 15 minutes or so because we're going to put aside the riots and the destruction of businesses, but I want to talk about the awarding of contracts because I have a very, very specific example, something that I was personally involved in. I wanted to bring that to your attention, get your thoughts on that, and then also talk about this little fracas between Elon Musk and Donald Trump, and what I think is ostensibly the reason for that fracture, which is ultimately boiling down to billions and billions and billions of, to use a Donald Trump term, of government contracts. So we're going to get into those topics and much, much more when Granite State Live continues. It is 8:30 right now. We will be taking your phone calls as well too towards the 8:45 portion of the hour. 833-603-8255 if you would like to voice your opinion on any of the topics that we've talked about this evening. 833-603-8255. Much more of Granite State Live coming up right after this. I'm going to get some refreshment. You can too. We'll see you on the backside of this break.
If you love camping, but don't love sleeping on the ground, then you might be interested in staying in our Bear Hill cabins. Here, deep in the middle of a state park forest, you can be fully immersed in nature while having the comforts of a furnished cabin to spend your nights. The Bear Hill cabins are located within Bear Brook State Park in Allenstown, New Hampshire, roughly 5 miles away from the main campground. There are currently 8 cabins available for reservation, each of which sleeps between 4 and 6 people. Inside each cabin, you'll find bunk beds, futon pull-out couch, and a table and chairs. Clear vinyl windows can be opened or closed from the outside, and a fire ring and picnic table are just a few steps away from the front porch. A single, family-style bathhouse is the only facility available, along with a few additional porta potties. Bear Hill Pond is just a short distance from the cabins and can be used for boating or fishing. There is a small beach area which you can walk or drive to for launching a boat or wading into the water. In the years to come, New Hampshire State Parks will continue to expand the number of cabins being offered at Bear Hill. During the fall and spring months, these cabins are especially appealing since temperatures fluctuate so drastically in the evenings. Families may also find this setup quite convenient since it doesn't involve wrestling with an oversized tent and lugging additional gear. This may result in more quality time that you can spend together around the campfire. To make a reservation, visit nhstateparks.org.
Not everyone can get up every day and look for ways to piss people off. But here at GraniteRock.com, we do that almost every day. I can't tell you how many times someone's lost their SHIT and threatened to end us. But we're still here, pissing people off. It's almost like we enjoy it. And we've been doing it since 2006. That's almost 2 decades of news, politics, and opinion, and now podcasts, and we're just getting started. We believe in principles before parties and politicians. We defend free markets and individual liberty, and if that makes you mad, it makes us smile. We're like Grandma after she stopped caring what other people thought. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
United We Stand, A Marine's Fight. Written by Julian Aceyard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Aceyard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble.
All right, welcome back to Granite State Live. All right, joining us on the video line, Bruce de Torres, Director of Communications for the American Small Business League. Bruce, again, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I wanted to get into something here. You know, you advocate for small businesses receiving a fair portion of the total value of all prime contracts. I was involved in a project this past year where in the technology sector. I was in Washington, D.C., going through a notice of funding meeting. This was at the Commerce Department. There were probably about 30 small businesses there that were fighting for a portion of a $20 million sliver of the Federal CHIPS Act, which allocated $50 billion towards the development and advancement of technology based in this country. But yet the Taiwanese semiconductor, and notice the name, the Taiwanese Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, receiving the lion's share, over $12 billion of this $50 billion pool, when American small businesses are fighting for a percentage of a $20 million grant that was put out to them. How the hell can especially with this techno-authoritarianism that's taking over this country, how can small businesses really push beyond that small business? I mean, people don't want to be small businesses for long. They want to be big businesses. But how do you do that when you've got favoritism that's being played by the federal government towards these multinational corporations? This to me seems absolutely ridiculous and counterproductive.
Right. And you would advise folks, listen, pick the door that you want to bang on, lean on, try to pry the lock, try to get your foot in a door, try to do that with some issue that is compelling. And ours is very, very simply that there is a law in the books that says 23% of all federal contracts must go to small businesses. And 35 years ago, our founder, Lloyd Chapman, sued to find out what small businesses a particular big contract went to. And he had to spend lots of money and time in court. And then the answer came that not the claim that the Pentagon was saying that it met the requirement for that particular project, but a tiny minuscule amount really went to small businesses. And lawsuit after lawsuit. And Lloyd would put out press releases about these legal victories and get invited on Fox, CNN, et cetera, et cetera. So to wrap up my answer and get right to the heart of your question, when enough Americans do something, write their Congress people, their senator, make phone calls, and create podcasts, blogs, et cetera, and back candidates on this particular issue, there's a chance. We do not see it coming from the top down. We do not see the SBA spontaneously acknowledging the dozens of congressional investigations, our 100 legal victories over 30 years, the many Inspector General reports from the SBA that show small business contracts routinely go to big businesses. It's part of a comprehensive corporate capture of the federal government, essentially all of its agencies. And guess what? Most roads lead to the Pentagon because, really big picture, the United States government is the world's largest purchaser of goods and services on the planet. Half of our budget and half of those expenditures go to and through the Pentagon. And they seem to have a lock grip on this contracting program, this contracting reporting. Now, the federal government is comprised of infinite agencies, authorities, panels, programs, commissions, all weighing in and having different stipulations about, well, in this industry, a company with 1,000 employees can be a small business. Huh? What? Yeah. And in this particular industry, up to a 2,000 employee business qualifies for a small business contract. Huh? Because of decades of relationships, favoritism, and just the momentum of, I'm going to say it, our ungodly military-industrial complex. We are the fulfillment of Eisenhower's warning in 1961.
So, Bruce, I'm going to put you in the hot seat with this question here, okay? And we don't do anything scripted. So I got to ask you, do you think that President Trump really is a friend to small business? Or is he a corporate guy like everybody else?
I don't know what else he is, but he does. I would bet that he's not a friend of small business. I would hope it's inadvertently. I would hope he believes what you and I would find on Google. Do 23% of contracts go to small businesses? Yes. Let's go to dinner. Case closed. Unfortunately, that's a ruse.
So, what are your thoughts about the relationship between? We're not going to talk about the splitting, the now fractured bromance between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. I got to be honest with you, I was feeling vindicated here because I was one of the few people who was saying, first of all, I don't like this. I don't like him. I don't want him in the White House. Nobody elected him. That this is too cozy. This is too close for comfort. It is not going to end well. And lo and behold, like 99.9999% of the time, I'm right. Your thoughts on this?
It's in my mind, it's in the category, as a Trump watcher for 10 years, actually more. I grew up in New York City. I was aware of Donald Trump in the 1980s when I was there, and he was all over the news as, a celebrity business success. As a Trump watcher, there are many things that are compellingly intriguing and that I appreciate what Trump did as president his first term and some of the things he's talking about now. But the romance and the breakup and all the publicity around first their friendship and now their spat is in the category of political theater. Frank Zappa, a great musician back in the 1980s, said, politics is the entertainment division of the military-industrial complex. And this falls in line with that. Now, more seriously, Musk represents the worst of the billionaire technocrats who are around Trump. Peter Thiel of Palantir brought J.D. Vance to Donald Trump. And the jury is out. We have to hope for the best that President Trump truly means to re-empower America and our economy with reindustrialization and with national sovereignty and our national independence. However, Keith and Julian, he has a lot of people around him, and he's already done and announced things that are walking us into what economist Catherine Austin Fitts calls the digital control grid. That's hand in glove with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. And we have to watch her recent conversation with Tucker Carlson about 3 or 4 weeks ago to get up to speed about how heinous that is.
I'm not going to mention the name. It's interesting you say that. I'm not going to mention the person's name, but a very, very prominent attorney, a very good friend of mine who has direct pipelines into the Trump world, has said, if you're going to see a digital ID and you're going to see a digital currency, it is going to come from the Trump administration. It's not going to come from the radical Democrats. It's going to come from somebody who is, at least on the surface, a Republican, and that's going to be Trump. And I absolutely believe before the end of his presidency, you are going to see a digital ID. And I think it's going to be done under the auspices of, well, we have to make sure that people who are here are legal. So what better way to do that than to have a digital ID and then also ushering in a digital currency as well? Your thoughts?
Well, it fulfills the worst that I first started hearing from Alex Jones 20 years ago. In the aggregate, Alex Jones is a national treasure. He's had his foibles, etc. But the scenario of the digital ID, Keith and Julian, are handcuffs the likes of which humanity has never had to escape before. I live in California. They just imposed the real ID for the driver's license. So you're right. These are steps. And if you saw the documentary, America, Freedom to Fascism by Aaron Russo.
Oh, that's a great video.
Right. He recounts, maybe he shows his interview with Nicholas Rockefeller. And he asks Rockefeller, what's the point? Why are you trying to control people and humanity and resources? Why do you keep nations poor? Why do you want it all for yourself? And that Rockefeller, obviously part of the family, said, the bottom line is to get everybody chipped, to control everybody and their currency. And Catherine Austin Fitts calls the digital ID and the digital currency, it's digital programmable currency, which fits right into the worst case scenarios of what is a 15-minute city, what's a smart city, and why won't my money work, 10 miles outside the allowable radius or circumference that I am allowed because of my score.
Yep. And now you juxtapose that with the state of Florida that's now permitting gold and silver to be used as legal tender within the state. I think it's a fantastic idea. But you mentioned a name which is very, very sinister, and that's Palantir. Peter Thiel, the former CEO, I don't know if he's former or current CEO of PayPal, one of the most disgusting, egregious, money-grabbing, thievery corporations to ever exist. PayPal. This Palantir is an opportunity to put a digital leash and control the citizens of this country and eventually the globe. Very, very similar to what the Chinese have done through the implementation of social credit scores.
Yes, and we will be told it's to protect us.
It's always under the auspices of protection.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And in the context of what we just went through in the name of COVID-19, the sacrifice of our rights, one could read Bobby Kennedy Jr.'s The Real Anthony Fauci and instantly be reminded of a big fat book from 1961 called The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William L. Shire, who was an American correspondent in Berlin up until the war. And then after the war, he spent 15 years plowing through the captured documents we retrieved from Berlin. And then he wrote how one of the smartest and most educated populations in Europe, the Germans, sacrificed incrementally, in the name of their safety, their rights. And there's such a parallel happening right now. We have to hope and pray. We have to lean on not only our own spiritual faith, the fact that most people are good, the fact that countless generations are coming. Children after children after children are coming. And even with Tucker Carlson, Catherine Austin Fitts, who warns of the digital control grid, said it's not inevitable. I don't think they'll be able to click it into place. But it takes countless more conversations like this with courage at the dinner table and at work to get people thinking about what they might say no to, what they might not comply with. That's where the rubber hits the road.
I couldn't have said it better. Bruce de Torres, Director of Communications for the American Small Business League. You can check out their website at asbl.com. That's asbl.com. I want to get you back on because I want to have a further conversation about this Palantir and some of the initiatives behind the scene here because I think that there's a much darker side to this Musk relationship. I want to explore that with you in the not-too-distant future. But I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight on Granite State Live.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure.
My pleasure. God bless and stay safe out there. All right. I think we're actually going to go just a little bit longer tonight because I know, Julian, you had somebody that you wanted to pull in. And we wanted to close the show out specifically talking about some of the leftist tactics that we're seeing not only in California, but I think that you're likely to see coming up over the weeks and months of the summer. We're just going to call it what it is. It's the Summer of Love 2025. You've got the idiots, the useful idiots out there that are mobilizing because they're taking their marching orders from Democrats who want to sow the seeds of destruction and chaos and violence and crime in the streets of good old United States.
All right. Up next, we have Dr. Karlin Boroshenko, psychologist and independent journalist that analyzes and exposes and decodes the left and their nefarious tactics to get their proletariat revolution in the United States. How you doing, Dr. Karlin? Thank you for coming on.
But
hey,
the
thank
Epstein
you for
tweet
having me. I've been very busy tracking all the stuff that's been going on the past several days, so I'm ready to chat about it.
All right. So, what do you see? I mean, let's give us your 60-second diagnostic of what we're seeing out there in California and what we may be seeing coming up on the 14th here around the country.
Yeah, so the first thing that we need to talk about is that there is a huge difference between Democrats and socialists and communists. And I understand that it's a nice talking point to say that this is a Democrat-run social protest. It is not. It is a communist and socialist-run protest. I've been studying and undercover with the Radical Revolutionary Far Left for 4 years now. I know these people. I've been tracking these groups for years. We have several different protest groups and organizing groups that are coming together all over the country. The big protests are going to be on Saturday. They're run by a group named Indivisible, which is really more of a progressive group. They're also run by the teachers unions, the NEA and the ATF. They're heavily involved in the organizing. They have organized almost 2,000 events nationwide on Saturday. Now, it is just a coincidence that this happened in conjunction with the LA riots, because the groups that were organizing in LA, the primary ones are Mexican nationalist groups, immigrant groups. There's also Antifa that's causing a lot of problems in LA. There's the Party for Socialism and Liberation that's behind a lot of these protests. These are much more far left groups. So I know that it seems kind of coincidental that we have all this stuff going on in LA and then these big set of nationwide events all over the country on Saturday. It really is just a coincidence. These groups don't normally work together. But what people need to understand is, you know, the group organizing the event on Saturday, they've been organizing protests for several months, and they're usually actually legitimately very peaceful events. Because of all the violence, though, that has really radicalized the extreme far left into the equation. And I fully expect them, based on everything I've seen with protests going on around the country today, currently, I expect there to be violence and a lot of stuff going on this weekend, piggybacking on the No Kings protests. So that's what I'm seeing.
So basically these people, and we've seen this in past protests as well, like the radical, the socialists and the communists actively using whatever is the current major issue of the day as the rallying cry to get more people out and supporting their cause in order to radicalize further to the left.
I wouldn't say it's the major issue of the day. The far left has been planning to attack Trump and ICE specifically since right after Trump took office. I was covering this back in January when, a lot of people thought that the left was really demoralized after the election. The reality is that they weren't. They just went into organizing mode, and they've been quietly planning all this for months and months and months. And so I wouldn't say it's the major issue of the day. It was always the issue they were going to attack Trump on, was the deportations. And they're managing to work with a lot of immigrant groups, especially in Los Angeles right now. We're seeing that. And those are the ones that are riling up the immigrant communities, which normally the immigrant communities don't participate in the far left protests, but they are now.
Damn. So basically this is the perfect storm happening right now. And what you're basically alluding to is, while conservatives were taking a victory lap, or while the right as a whole were taking a victory lap after the election, you mean these people don't just operate within election cycles? They get active and mobilized at a local and state level outside of election cycles in order to push their agenda?
Hey, Julian, I'll even give you one better than that. These people don't even participate in elections. They don't actually believe in the electoral process. Their entire goal is eventually to overthrow the government. It's to overthrow what they call the capitalist U.S. government or the capitalist constitution. They do not believe that elections are going to get them there. And so, yeah, I mean, listen, the Democratic Party may have been demoralized after the election, but the far left was actually energized. And they see this as an opportunity not only to oppose Trump, which is basically their favorite place to be, but it's also to recruit and radicalize people that may have been more normie Democrats, liberals, progressives, things like that. This is why it's so important to differentiate between Democrats and communists, because I know people think they're the same thing. They're not the same thing in any way, and the real far left is far more dangerous.
So this alludes to conversations we've had in the past. I often use this. I use the idea of, and it's probably my most famous quote and most used quote is, systemic racism is intersectional Marxism, highly focused in urban economic centers where there is no cultural, ideological, or political machine to combat the death, poverty, and destruction before they perfect it and import it to your communities via the education system and popular culture. But underlying all of that is your juxtaposition, which is that anybody operating on a hyper-racialized, hyper-gendered, hyper-political narrative is completely missing the underlying regard that this is about taking down capitalism and taking down that main thread throughout the entirety of what makes up America.
Yeah, I'm going to make it real easy. And listen, you don't need all those words to describe what systemic racism is. That's a lot of words, bro. I'm going to make it real easy. Systemic racism is the system that upholds racism. The system that upholds racism, according to the far left, is capitalism, because they believe that capitalism built the system of racism in the country in the first place. And so, yeah, all these issues, and I understand this might be difficult to understand, but like the left, the real far left actually hates identity politics. Why do they hate identity politics? They don't want there to be any identity. So any issues related to gender, any issues relating to race, all of these things, if you're talking about Democrats and liberals, they are playing identity politics. Real socialists and communists, and again, it's the real socialists and communists that are driving all of this stuff. The Democrat stuff is trickle down, and so they actually don't want identity to exist at all.
But they'll use identity politics because they're smart enough to know that they can use identity politics because the useful idiots will latch on to that and become the foot soldiers for what they're trying to get achieved, especially in these major cities. Or do you disagree with that?
I really do disagree with that, but I do understand why you think that, because that's how it's positioned a lot of the time in the media. But again, I spend my days actually listening to what the real far left says. I go into their trainings, I go into their, documents, I read their manifestos. I do all the boring stuff that drives everyone crazy so you guys don't have to. And so, no, the real far left actually is very anti-identity politics, and they have been for a very long time.
So anything, and they're anti-identity politics because anything between you and the state.
It's not that so much. They believe the state is built on capitalism, but it's anything between you and the collective. So the collective for them is going to be different than the state. I understand what you're saying, though. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, essentially, they believe that all identity, all categories are socially constructed by capitalism, and they believe that all oppression will go away if we just get rid of all categories, which I know sounds bizarre, but they do actually say this in their trainings. They do.
Now, is this training? Is this training for the foot soldiers, or is this training for the people who are going out to manipulate and exploit the useful idiot crowd? Because I got to be honest with you, the people that I see marching around couldn't find their way out of a phone booth with a map. These people are the bottom of the barrel intellectuals who could absolutely be exploited and manipulated by people who see their lack of critical thinking skills and recognize their vulnerability towards manipulation.
Yeah, again, I'm going to say with all due respect, I have to vehemently disagree. I've been undercover with these people on multiple occasions, and they're not stupid. They're not dumb. Now, I think that the conflict comes because they do speak a completely different language than you do. And oftentimes this is the biggest challenge in people understanding the left. And I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad, but it is just, it's like putting a French speaker and a Chinese speaker in the same room and expecting them to be able to communicate with each other. Both of them are going to sound dumb to the other person, right? And so we're kind of dealing with the same thing. The left is actually very organized, very strategic. I don't actually even agree with this distinction between foot soldiers and true believers, because the foot soldiers know exactly what they're doing. And yeah, I mean, I've gone into leftist trainings over and over and over again, and I've asked like the same basic questions about, do they understand that everything is about capitalism? Do they see things in terms of identity or race? And universally, they understand exactly what the far left is teaching. It really is in all their trainings. I mean, how I got into this is I started listening to DEI trainings, and all of this content was in DEI trainings. Then I just kept going back to the far left, and it turns out that's where it all came from in the first place.
So are you suggesting that the people that are out there rioting in LA actually have some foundational understanding of this leftist movement? Because to be honest with you, the people that are out there waving Mexican flags and throwing rocks at police officers are nothing more than criminal thugs who have found an excuse to go out and engage in shitbaggery. And I think personally that, I mean, I understand you're talking about the trainings, but these people, the people that are out there engaging in this activity, how many of these people are going to podcasts or watching videos or attending online training so that way they can understand the finest inner workings of Marxism?
More than you would ever dare dream, Keith, because the far left actually builds their entire organizing apparatus on education. Education is the number one thing that they do. Now, what you are correct about is there are absolutely people in Los Angeles, especially, is a great one to look at because most people have seen it, that are doing like really low IQ things. They're throwing rocks, they're looting at stores. Part of what's going on in Los Angeles is, again, the immigrants groups don't normally protest with the real far left. So you have to take the immigrants groups groups and kind of put them over here. A lot of those people are just, they have people in their families that are here illegally. They don't want them to get deported. So it is a little bit of a wrench. Not every city is going to have that. What I will say is members of the Party for Socialism and Liberation 100% do the type of education that I'm talking about. And they're one of the major organizers of all the protests across the country. And I say that again because I've been tracking these people for 2 years. I've been in their meetings. Antifa, 100%. Antifa is actually more educated than almost anyone on the far left. Now, they're violent, militant thugs, but that's because they've internalized this ideology and they believe it with every fiber of their being because they spend so much time studying it and talking about it. So I understand, like, is there a lot of nuance on the left, but these are not dumb people for the most part.
So these are the people that what you're talking about, the people who are emotionally, physically, psychologically, and educationally invested in the ideology. These are the people who are putting out the bricks. They're doing the trainings on filling water bottles and freezing them, macing cops with bear mace.
The people that were handing out the gas masks, which are not. No, that I completely understand. Yeah. But when I watch, we were watching the other night, watching the video of the shirtless guy in the minivan doing reverse donuts. And then sideswiping bicyclists. The notion that this guy somehow is a leftistly educated operative, to me, just I don't know. That just seems kind of crazy. It's just here's a shitbag who's doing what shitbags do when there's an opportunity to stick their middle finger up at the man. But I understand it from the organization standpoint. Absolutely, I would concur with that 100%.
Yeah, but what do you think is more likely, that the shitbag was the one that organized the tens of thousands of people to come out and protest, or that the shitbag showed up and took advantage of the situation? So it's like one of those things where I understand it's the most outlandish thing and makes the best media content, but the people that are doing that stuff are not the organizers. They're not the ones that are doing this. They're the ones showing up and causing problems, and they're doing exactly what Antifa and the Party for Socialism and Liberation and these far left groups want them to do. So if there's anyone that's foot soldiers, it would be the immigrants groups, because they don't normally associate with the far left, and so they are being used in this case
as the useful idiots. I think that's what Keith was alluding to, is that these groups are the useful idiots, and you have the organizations you're talking about that are actually, they're purpose driven. They know exactly what they want to accomplish, whereas these immigrant groups, they have other aims towards, legalizing, amnesty, whatever it may be, that are just being used in a situation and to, I guess, some degree being taken advantage of?
Yeah, I mean, maybe a little bit, but again, Los Angeles is really kind of it's the unique situation in this because there's so many immigrants there. But if you look around the country today, I've been tracking protests around the country today in the middle of the week. Boston had massive protests, Chicago, massive protests, Milwaukee, of all places, like places in Texas, Arizona, stuff like that. There are these protests that are springing up all over the place, and I've been looking at the video of these. These are not immigrants groups. These are Antifa and the Party for Socialism and Liberation.
So back to Summer of Love and, original Summer of Love. We had in the original Black Lives Matter protests and stuff. I remember back in the day, we had this conversation about how during the day you'd have the peaceful protests, and then right around that 9 o'clock hour, you'd see Antifa throwing Molotov cocktails and throwing bricks through windows, and you had that viral video of that black woman going, "Stop, stop, stop! They're going to blame us for what you guys are doing," and they're going, "No, we're helping you. We're helping you." Is this what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I do think that that's pretty much what we're going to see this weekend. I think mostly during the day, you're going to see a lot of peaceful protests, and they will be mostly peaceful. But I got to be honest, the amount of protesters that have come out today on a Tuesday night or afternoon, that's given me pause about the people that are going to be showing up during the day on Saturday. I think there's going to be a massive turnout on Saturday. I just got done streaming and infiltrating 2 organizing calls for it that are being put on by the protest. The ACLU tonight did a protest to train people how to know their rights. They're basically trying to train people on how not to get arrested or what to do if they do get arrested. There were over 20,000 people on that call tonight.
I'm looking at this No Kings toolkit for hosts and supplies and legal representation, insurance for the This is
Yeah,
in
this
depth.
This is major.
I don't think the average person understands how bad this is.
Are you comfortable saying where you are located?
I'm in New Hampshire.
You're in New Hampshire. Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, because I've had you on my WNTK show previously. We've had actually some very, very good conversations about this. I mean, I'm curious, and I wanted to ask you because I suspected that you were in New Hampshire. I just didn't want to divulge that without your permission. But I mean, I'm looking here, Keene. I'm looking here at. I kind of laugh because the one that's going to be happening in Peterborough is only 12 to 1:30 because the 65 to 70-year-old useless housewives crowd can't stand up for more than 90 minutes. But I mean, do you think that these people are really going to start to engage in violent criminal insurrection here in New Hampshire? Because it seems to me they're just asking to get their asses kicked.
Do I think the woman hosting a house party in Peterborough is going to be a violent insurrectionist? No, probably not.
No. She might throw a scone at you, but that's probably the worst.
Yeah.
But when you look at places like Keene, when you look at places like Nashua, I'm actually surprised that there isn't one in Manchester. But Portsmouth, Dover, Concord,
North Conway.
Of course, no surprise. There's one in Lebanon. Of course, there's one in Hanover. There's one in Enfield, New Hampshire. I don't know. There's like 15 people that live in Enfield, New Hampshire, and they're going to have a rally in their town green. What do you think the likelihood is that this is going to devolve into something that is really going to be sinister? I mean, at least here on the home front.
Well, in New Hampshire, Keith, I'm not worried about it devolving into violence at all. I think if people want to go out and see what's going on, they'll be perfectly safe to do it. I'm going to be going to Boston, where the Pride Parade is actually combining with the No Kings protest. And so we're going to see what's going on down there. Again, there are massive protests there today. So I'm tagging my husband along with me to make sure that I have someone to protect me in case things get rough. But that's where I'll be.
Give me a call for that one. That sounds interesting. Violent and naked. I got nothing. But
what could possibly go wrong, right?
But so paint us a picture of how bad you think this might get over these next few days leading up to Saturday. Like how bad should we be expecting? Should we be expecting for it to get like violence, assaulting officers, burning down courthouses again, or
again, not here, but I mean, we're talking about major metropolitan areas where you're likely to see that. Boston, New York, Philadelphia. I mean, Baltimore. I mean, just there's so many of these cities that this has been fomenting for so long. They're powder kegs, and again, all it needs is the right time, the right opportunity with the right message to just set these cities ablaze, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, listen, I have Party for Socialism and Liberation on video talking about trying to stage a pre-revolutionary crisis. They've been trying to provoke this for 2 years. I mean, they got to get, and again, I have this on them saying it on video flat out. And so I think that this is one of those instances where you've got extremely far leftist groups that are trying to provoke confrontation with the cops. That is the purpose of this. There are people in far leftist groups that volunteer to get arrested, that train to get arrested, that are up at the front of the lines, purposely trying to get in the cops' faces and provoke them to do something. And once they do something, they get it on video, they put it out all over the place. That is the purpose of what they're trying to do right now. And I think that I personally am very worried that you have one wrong move. And we're talking about, 700 Marines going into Los Angeles. And listen, I'm in favor of all that. I want Trump to go into Los Angeles with overwhelming force. I don't even think he's doing enough. But you take one of those Marines and one of those Marines makes a mistake and we have a whole new ball game.
So we were just talking about this online, about these Marines. I don't think the average person understands. We are not law enforcement. The best case scenario, they send in LE Battalion, 1st Law Enforcement Battalion, which is a combination of all the MP companies on the West Coast. They send them into LA, and at most they can help with riot control, but they can't detain anyone because that's a police action. So they can protect ICE, but as soon as it gets outside of protecting the federal courthouses or protecting federal officers, outside of that, when it comes to actually detaining people or locking people up or anything like that, their hands are tied.
Yeah. I think people think that there's going to be a lot more force in Los Angeles than there is, and I don't know if Trump has the guts to do what it's going to take to put this down. And I really am very concerned about what it means for the rest of the summer.
Unfortunately, I think this is all, pretextual leading up to the only thing Trump can do in order to make the nationalizing of the National Guard or the sending in the Marines effective as far as actually squashing this is you're going to have to you're going to have to invoke the Insurrection Act. You're going to have to invoke something that actually makes that force.
It's coming.
Oh, it's definitely coming, because that's the only reason I could possibly see as far as a game of chess here. It's the only reason I could see sending my knights and rooks into downtown LA.
Yeah.
Well, and again, and they're there for one reason. They're there to protect the federal buildings. They're there to protect the federal. They're not to federal employees. They're not there to provide, either secondary or tertiary support for local law enforcement. They're not force multipliers for LAPD or for the sheriff's department or anything else like that. So, again, I think it's one of those questions that if this thing winds up spiraling out of control, I had mentioned earlier, I'm very surprised with all of the illegal firearms that are on the street in Los Angeles that there hasn't been a couple of people who have taken pot shots. Maybe there has been, and we haven't heard about this, but you would imagine that at some point in time, you're going to have some low IQ turd that's going to wind up taking a couple of shots at law enforcement, and that's where things are going to take a very, very ugly turn.
Hey, I tell, like I said earlier, Trump, go ahead and tell the Bloods and Crips to go ahead and clean house in L.A. Take out the narcos themselves. These are your neighborhoods, protect them. But any chance they had of winning black support just went out the window. I just see that they just spray painted over the Kobe Bryant mural for his death.
Well, I actually
downtown
thought
LA, they just spray painted over Kobe Bryant. If there is a god in LA, it's got to be Kobe, and they just graffitied all over the mural of him and his daughter.
Let me know when they graffiti over the George Floyd Memorial, and then I'll By the way, we're still celebrating the fact that George Floyd has been 5 years, drug and crime free, but I digress. This, I don't know. They're pushing and they're pushing and they're pushing and they're pushing, and Trump is going to respond. There's no question about it. But this is something that we had been talking about months ago. Was that the Insurrection Act was absolutely going to be utilized? That he was going to be going after the mayors and the governors of these cities. There was an organization that was actually started by J.B. Pritzker and the governor of Colorado. I forgot the name of it, but it was like Governors Preserving Democracy or something like that. And it was that they were setting themselves up basically with a parallel government, which is one of the first steps to a revolution, is to have a mechanism to govern in place if, God forbid, they were ever successful. Where does this end? And I had mentioned earlier, this is June 10th. We're not even in the summer yet, so we still have months of this. But Trump isn't out of office until January of 2029. Based upon what you've seen, based upon what you're hearing, what do you think is likely for the summer of 2025, the summer of 2026?
I think it's going to be worse this summer than it was in 2020, and I don't even think it's going to be close. Because it's like they're ready to go. I mean, Trump is really pissing them off with a lot of stuff that he's doing. They're highly organized. They are highly strategic about what they're doing. They plan out months in advance. Like I said, Antifa has been talking about how they want to attack ICE facilities literally since November, since like the week after Trump got elected. And so they've been disseminating all this stuff out for months. And we've seen this play out in the media where there's been these just like smaller protests that get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger every single time. And now it's starting to reach a point of critical mass where they're getting really big, and they're only going to get bigger. And I just recommend people in cities, be safe. Do not go near these people. These people really are dangerous. They are not your friend. A lot of them are, I say they're smart, and they are very smart, but a lot of them are crazy. They're smart crazy. And so you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you can get hurt.
So you got a lot of people online stealing your work, but none of them could stand up and sound the horn and be like, "Hey, by the way, I just stole some intellectual property from Dr. Karlin Poroshenko, but I'm not going to ring the alarm and let you know about what's coming in a couple months." It happened to all be about grifting.
Julian, it's almost like you've been Twitter feed screaming for months. Why aren't you idiots listening? I'm showing you the literal effing video. Like, it's like, no, but this is the conservative grift machine. And again, I would encourage everyone, if you want to see the sources, you never have to take my word for it. I will show you the left's video. I will show you the full primary sources. Come and find me on YouTube, Rumble, X. Come find my Substack. It's carlin.substack.com. And I will show you what they're doing. And there is no question, once you actually start looking at the content, that we are in a world of trouble. And I do not believe the right takes this nearly as seriously as they should be.
Thank you. I want to get you back on because I actually want to do more and do that expose on that, because I think we need to blow the doors off this. I think we need to blow the lid off this, and I think people need to understand exactly what is behind this movement. There's a lot of confusion about it, and I think the best thing to do, it's the best disinfectant possible. Expose it in the sunlight. Thank you so much for jumping on the program. Really, really appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you for coming on, Dr. B.
All right. That is going to do it for this Tuesday night, the 10th day of January. We're not even into the summer yet, and already it is the Summer of Love 2025. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Stay strapped. If you have a firearm, carry it. Understand what your local laws are. Understand what you can do and what you can't do. Understand your justification laws. 627. If you guys ever have any questions about this stuff, remember, this is what I do for a living, guys. Feel free to reach out to me. KeithOnTheAir@gmail.com. That's KeithOnTheAir@gmail.com. More than happy to have a conversation with you. Stay safe. Be well. And I'm going to remind you, be nice to one another. Civility does work. Talk to you next week. It's June.